Hello and welcome to COS Today, as we bring you Roundtable. The Roundtable segment is presented here every fourth Monday of the month at 7 p.m. We'll be focusing on education and discussion of the topics and challenges we all face as we use the Constitution to save the Constitution. Join us now as we bring you COS Today's Roundtable with our MC, John Ackerman.
And welcome once again to Convention of States Today. This is episode number 319. That's 319. And this is the October Roundtable. I'm your Roundtable host, John Ackerman. We need to bring the rest of the panel on. We've got the Indiana Communications Coordinator, Ken Kashuba. We've got Ken Whaley from COS Idaho, Communications Coordinator, and Ken Kashuba. And there's Ken. Hi, Ken. COS Idaho.
How are you? I'm getting a bit of echo.
Yeah, I'm hearing myself a few seconds after I talk.
Hi, Ken. COS Idaho. How are you? I'm getting a bit of echo.
And there's Dale Parrish. Yeah, he's the normal COS Today host.
Hi, Ken. How are you? Getting a bit of echo.
And there's Dale Parrish.
I don't know. What do you think is causing that, Ken?
Hard to say. It's
Dale Parrish.
I think Ken Whaley needs to mute. What do you think is causing that?
just mute everybody one at a time, and see if you can detect where it's coming from.
I think Ken Whaley needs to mute. What do you think is causing that?
I think it started when Ken came on, but I'm not sure.
Okay, I muted Ken Whaley.
Okay, that's
Okay, it stopped.
probably what it was, just picking up audio off of somebody's microphone, probably.
Okay, I
Okay.
muted Ken Whaley. All right,
Okay, that's
Mute him again.
mute him again.
It started again when he unmuted. Okay. So, Ken Kashuba, I want
Yes.
to call on you first to talk about this QR code that's up above my shoulder here. Okay.
Yeah, that QR code, that's there as a support code. It's basically a place for you to, your viewers, our valued viewers. We were looking for some support from you, so we're asking you to basically take your smartphone out, capture that QR code, put in your name and email address, and you'll join our valued list of supporters. With that, you'll gain some access to a platform with other supporters, so you can input information as to what you'd like to see on future programming, as well as get caught up on some of our tremendous contributors segments, which are all there for you. So go ahead and sign up today and become a supporter.
Yeah, I'm a supporter. You can be too. So thanks, Ken, for inviting our viewers to scan that QR code and become a supporter. Well, our topic tonight is the Gaza peace deal. 2 weeks ago, Hamas released all of the living hostages, and they've been slowly releasing the remains of other hostages. I saw on the news that they released one more today. And I always question in my mind, why are things happening now? Why didn't this happen 6 months ago or a year ago or 18 months ago? Or why didn't it happen 2 years ago, right after the hostages were taken? And so I was watching the Victor Davis Hanson podcast, which you can find the whole thing on YouTube if you're interested. But Victor is a renowned military historian and one of the great mental giants, a huge conservative scholar on the scene these days. And he has put together this little talk on why now. And I want to play part of that for you tonight because he says it a whole lot better than I could. Here's Victor Davis Hanson's take on why we have a peace deal now.
in the Israeli-Hamas war. Once Donald Trump started to intervene in these disputes all over the world, Ethiopia and Egypt, Kosovo and Serbia, Armenia and Azerbaijan, Pakistan and India, that created momentum and confidence in his negotiating skills. And we have on the table a blueprint for a ceasefire with the exchange of the hostages they took on October 7th. Why is this happening now? He was dealing again from a position of strength. You develop personal relationships with them, you offer them trade and lucrative incentives. It's a completely different approach, a completely different world. He's going to use that same formula to address the war in Ukraine. Hello, this is Victor Davis Hanson for the Daily Signal. Donald Trump is getting a lot of publicity, and rightfully so, for breaking the impasse in the Israeli-Hamas war. And we have on the table a blueprint for a ceasefire with the exchange of hostages from Hamas, surrendering the hostages they took on October 7th. 2 years ago, and then perhaps as many as eventually 1,700 terrorists, some of them convicted murderers, will be given back to what is left of Hamas. Israel will recede somewhat from its operations in Gaza to about holding or occupying about 50% with a proposed graduated withdrawal as Hamas supposedly meets the conditions of the ceasefire that everybody envisions in phase 2 may lead to a peace. Why is this happening now, though? It didn't happen under Biden, a settlement in the Middle East. It did not happen under Trump's first administration. It did not happen under Obama. It did not happen on George Bush. There were about 10 things that had to happen. All these intricate pieces in this puzzle, the pieces of the piece, all fell into success in a way that made it possible.
I think that's all we got.
And that's where we stop. That's unfortunate. That's unfortunate because he has 10 reasons why it's happening now. And you'll just have to go to YouTube and look up the Daily Signal podcast with Victor Davis Hanson if you want to get those reasons. Okay. Well, the thing they talked about in the news a lot was the 20-point peace plan. I looked at that, I read it, and those are powerful points, but it would have taken us 2 or 3 hours to go through all 20 points. And so we don't have that kind of time on the roundtable. The other way to look at the peace plan is the 3 phases. Phase 1 is underway right now. And I want to invite Ken Whaley, who has disappeared.
Okay, well, we're gonna let's hope
it is underway right now. Okay, Ken is coming back. If everybody else mutes themselves while Ken talks, Ken wants to talk about phase 1 of the peace plan. Okay, Ken, your turn. Mutes themselves while Ken talks. Ken wants to talk about phase 1 of the peace plan. Okay,
hey, I'm waiting until the second run through of everything quiets down.
Phase 1 of the peace plan. Okay?
Almost there. I'm waiting until the second run through of everything quiets down. Okay, we'll give this a shot here, and then we'll see how well this works out. I'm hearing myself, so that's going to be a bit tricky, but we'll do our best. We'll give this a shot here, and then we'll see how well this works out. So today I wanted to walk through 5 key points about the ongoing ceasefire and humanitarian situation going on between Israel and Hamas. Obviously, phase 1, as it was led into here. Okay, so I'm going to kind of start at the top on the things that I think are most intense or most important, and then least important rather, and then work towards most that are most critical. Okay, so first up, basically the hostilities in the front lines. I think everybody's aware of the ceasefire agreement that went into effect early this month, officially activated on October 10th, is still in place. no major shift in territorial control. The big takeaway here is that both sides are mostly honoring the freeze. Okay. So that said, the situation isn't without tension. There are disputes about international troops entering Gaza, especially as part of the stabilization force. Apparently, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu confirmed that Israel retains the right to
Ken,
I'm going to stop. Okay, yes, sir.
have you got your audio and your microphone on?
I'm doing everything the same way I always have, Dale.
Have you got your audio and your microphone on?
I'm not sure what you even mean by that. I'm doing everything the same as I always have.
All right.
It's got to be an internet connection echo that's happening. He can't control it. It's just happening.
All right.
I can mute. Well, but see, then I can't hear you guys if I mute. So, I mean, I'm not hearing anything now, but then I can't hear your.
I can mute. Well, you go ahead and do that.
Guys, if I mute. So,
while you're speaking.
But that side, then I can't hear your. Okay, fair enough. Let's see.
Go ahead and do that.
Okay, so can't hear what's going on from you guys, but I'll go ahead and move forward and see how this works out here. Maybe I can get a thumbs up if things quit echoing. Again, nothing different than I've ever done, but we'll move on and all will hopefully be good here. So as I was saying, basically the ceasefire agreement officially went into effect on October 10th. It is still in place. There's been no major shift in territorial control. The big takeaway here is that both sides basically are honoring the freeze. So that said, the situation isn't without tension. I think I touched on this. Prime Minister Netanyahu is, shall we say, very much not happy with the idea of Turkish troops being part of the international peacekeeping force. They're not calling it that. Stabilization forces, I believe what they're terming it. So he's not happy with Turkish forces being in there. It's kind of its own story. We don't have time for it today, but there is a little friction, but it's holding. So, but militarily speaking, no new offenses, no major flare-ups since the breach we saw back on October 19th. So broadly speaking, again, the front lines are holding. Next is kind of the idea of the exchange. This is obviously a very sensitive part of the agreement, and it's playing out very slowly. So far, Israel has confirmed the receipt of the remains of 10 deceased Israeli hostages. That was the last I had heard. Perhaps there was one today. Honestly, I didn't get to the news today, so my bad on that. But under the terms of the agreement, each of those is to be matched by the release of 15 Palestinian bodies, basically a 15-to-1 ratio. Now, the full tally on how many Palestinian bodies have been returned hasn't been made public, but the process is reportedly underway and working. Hamas has cited field condition and access limitations as part of the reason for their delay on returning Israeli bodies. And let's face it, when you consider the devastation throughout the Gaza Strip and in all of Hamas, it's really not hard to believe that would be the case. Some of these bodies could be under tons of rubble, even if they do know where they are. So this is one of the more technical and more somber parts of the deal. But the exchange, though slower than hope, certainly is continuing. All we can do is hope it does continue that way. So then on to the release of the Palestinian prisoners themselves. There's actually measurable progress here. So originally, roughly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners and detainees have been released so far. That includes 250 Palestinians that were serving life sentences in Israel, as well as about 1,700 Palestinians that have been arrested since the war began. So these were numbers that were anticipated as part of the Phase 1 agreement. And while the names and individual records haven't been all made public, total release figures seem to have been widely reported and very much confirmed. So this is one of the clearer wins in terms of the follow-through. It's been a bit contentious in the Israeli political landscape, but the release has taken place. So that's moving along as well. Aspect number 3, the Israeli hostages themselves. Now, this has obviously been a central concern from the outset. But as far as I have been able to tell today, all 20 of the Israeli hostages who were being held in Gaza have been released. They've been out for a little while now in the first phase of this agreement. Now, Sadly, they're all in various stages of health, both good and some very bad. And certainly all seem to have suffered some pretty severe psychological issues. And let's face it, it's really not hard to believe that's the case. Some of these folks have spent several years literally in a dark hole. They're going to have issues. It's just going to take time. What can you say about that? Now, as for the deceased, again, 10 Israeli bodies have been returned. That number is part of the ongoing identification and recovery effort coordinated through some of the various intermediaries. There are a total of 28 deceased hostages known to Israel. So this means that more than half have yet to be recovered. So while the progress is happening, still incomplete and, on the remains aspect of things. So hopefully that will continue. That'll pick up. Again, I have a hard time seeing how the Hamas folks would have gotten those bodies back very quickly based on the destruction that has taken place on that side, within the Gaza Strip. So, and finally, kind of a big picture part of this, the humanitarian situation in Gaza is really dire. There is aid flowing in, but not really very fast at all. So according to Reuters and other agencies that I was able to touch on, Gaza currently is receiving about 750 metric tons of aid per day. Now, according to various sources, the quote humanitarian planners, they need actually 2,000 tons daily. So right now, Gaza is getting less than half of what it needs to keep the people in water, foods, various medicinal supplies, etc. The thing that I wondered about is why that's happening. You'd think that would be the easy part. Let these trucks roll in, bring in the goods, etc. But there are some very specific reasons. First, the border bottlenecks. So there's one main entry for humanitarian aid. That's the Rafah crossing from Egypt, and it's under really tight control. What I found really is that basically every truckload is subject to Israeli inspection with the aim of preventing weapons or dual-use materials from reaching the militants, the Palestinians, etc. I'm sorry, not the Palestinians, the Hamas aspect of it, again, the militants. To me, that's a legitimate concern for Israel's security, but the process is slow and at times really inconsistent. I even found reports of some trucks sitting for days waiting for clearance, even though really all they had was basic supplies like food and medicine. But we know things can be stored away and that kind of stuff, so I understand the Israeli need to be very thorough about that. Okay. Second, once aid even gets through, distributing it inside Gaza is really a major challenge. The northern region in particular remains especially hard to reach. The roads are damaged. Buildings have, been blown to pieces. I mean, it's just a giant mess. And of course, parts of the north still face intermittent clashes and lawlessness. So the aid convoys have been attacked or looted, and some aid groups are really reluctant to move beyond safer southern areas without guarantees, but there's nobody really to give those guarantees. So it's a real vacuum that way about what's going on. The other aspect, and I've heard very little about this on mainstream news, shall we say, is a critical fuel shortage. Because without fuel, let's face it, the trucks can't deliver the supplies, water can't be pumped, the generators can't run hospitals, everything comes to a grinding halt. Even basic movement inside Gaza is limited by this. So fuel is either not getting in fast enough or not being distributed effectively. Unknown based on what I was able to find, but it's a key issue with very few answers that I could really find any clear way out of. And finally, last point I wanted to touch on is the political structure inside Gaza. It's totally in flux. I mean, let's face it, Hamas is very much weakened. There really is no replacement government in place. So aid groups are really operating in a vacuum, as I mentioned. Coordination is patchy. There's no clear central authority to prioritize deliveries or manage the logistics at the scale needed to make this work. So aid is moving. It's moving very slowly, unevenly, and without support structure needed to make it all work. And sadly, the civilians are paying the price. So the framework for relief exists, but the political and logistical machinery to execute it is still not fully in place. And until it is, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza will likely very much continue. So very quickly to kind of wrap it up, the ceasefire is holding. though it's a little stressful. All living hostages are home, back to the Israeli side. Remains recovery is continuing and moving, again, slowly. Palestinian prisoners have met the phase 1 target. So Israel is holding up its part of things on that front. And the remains for remains exchange is happening, but again, very slowly. And again, the humanitarian side, the aid's moving, just not very fast at all. So kind of where, well, it is where all the ceasefire and the humanitarian status things in Gaza stands as of today.
Ken, that's a wonderful report. I want to thank you for doing that research and for bringing that information about phase 1 to us. And also want to thank you for soldiering through that internet echo that we had. Once you muted your speakers, we could hear you perfectly and there was no echo. And I guess your speakers are back on now because you're indicating visually that you're hearing me okay. So I want to move to Brett Sturley. He's our friend from the great state of Missouri. And he's going to talk about phase 2, which has to do with demilitarization and security measures in Gaza. So Brett, your turn.
Well, thank you, John. A great job, Ken. And I think, when you look back, where do all these bodies and these hostages come from? Well, it comes from October 7th, 2023, whenever Hamas murdered 1,200 Israeli civilians and took 250 hostages. And to date, there's only been 20 living hostages and released. And oddly enough, they're all men. Doesn't really takes you to a really dark place when you think about why exactly that is, what happened to the women, and unspeakable things. I mean, it's horrible. But the second phase of the peace plan, and this is the way that's pretty well summarized here, is that the proposed strategy includes the destruction of Hamas's offensive weaponry, such as tunnels, military infrastructure, to neutralize their capacity for future violence. And the statement says that Gaza will be a de-radicalized, terror-free zone that does not pose a threat to its neighbors. That's going to be quite a feat. It also offers amnesty to Hamas members who wish to commit to peaceful coexistence with the Israelis and the surrounding Arab countries, with safe passage provided for those opting for exile. Additionally, a temporary international stabilization force composed of United States, Arab, and European personnel would be deployed to oversee the security and facilitate the training of the Palestinian police force, hopefully ensuring a long-term stability and peace. As Ken said, all this is in flux right now. The composition of the international stabilization force is uncertain. It looks like the Qataris are going to be involved in that, which brings about its own issues there, as Qatar was one of the chief funders of Hamas, but they seem to have at least seen the light, or they don't want to see the darkness that President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu has brought to some of the Israeli adversaries. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens, because this phase 2 is really where the rubber meets the road, and it's in my opinion the most difficult part of the plan. And if you go to a little bit of a background, the last election that was held in Gaza was in 2006, and this is whenever the Israelis exited Gaza, relinquished the quote-unquote settlements. Again, this is all historically Israeli and Jewish land, Gaza and Judea and Samaria, which is the West Bank of the Jordan River. So whenever they had this election, the Palestinian people, I kind of say Palestinian because we can get into a whole nother thing about that. There's really not a Palestinian people. The people who are there in Gaza that are termed Palestinians are really historically a nomadic Arab population. They really have no home. They have just settled there and in Gaza, and been permitted to stay there by Israel simply because the other surrounding countries, Arab countries, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, don't want them because they've always caused problems. This goes back hundreds and thousands of years. But anyway, the Palestinian people in 2006 gave Hamas 76 of the 132 seats in parliament. And and that was called the Palestinian Legislative Council. Their activities have actually been suspended since 2007 because in order to have a quorum, in order to do business in the Palestinian Legislative Council, there has to be a 2/3 majority vote. Well, there's not 2/3. They can't build a 2/3 coalition to actually have a quorum. Most quorums are just a majority of the members of the organization. They had this as a 2/3 majority. For what reasons? I'm not exactly sure. Probably to make it to cement Hamas in as the ruling authority. And so control since 2006 has been maintained by Hamas mainly through just terrorist tactics. And there have been a total of 17 ceasefires between Hamas and Israel since 2006. Every single one of them has been broken by Hamas. Now, will they comply with this new peace agreement and relinquish control of the Gaza Strip? Possibly. I have some serious doubts, but the situation is different this time. And I have not listened to Victor Davis Hanson's full critique of this, and I would recommend you doing that. But we'll see how my points line up with his. So these are a few different a few conditions that make this different than previous ceasefires. We'll first focus on President Trump and the United States efforts. First of all, we've heard forever that you can't have peace in the Middle East unless you have solve the Palestinian problem. Give the Palestinians their own country, which they've effectively had since 2006, and you see what they've done with it. And President Trump basically just ignored all that, ignored the urging of European nations to capitulate to the Palestinians and just give them what they want. If we just treat them a whole lot nicer and give them what they want, then they'll play nice with us. That doesn't work. In the Middle East, power is in force. Those are the currencies in that area. And President Trump has been willing to both say what he means and then back up those words and do what he says. And you see how President Trump brought together these Arab and Muslim countries: Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and he did this by entering into trade deals. He did it through trade policy. Said, "Hey, guys, you can either succeed and have some peace, or you continue to be at war and not have as much success." Well, they opted for success, and again, this is built upon President Trump's previous wars that he stopped just in his first 9 months of his second term. And you notice how effective this is. You can notice how effective this is because there's been no Arab or Muslim countries that have opposed this deal. They are all on board, and they're all apparently willing to help. President Trump stated that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and he gave them a deadline. He said, this is a deadline that I'm going to give you, and you can either do this yourself or we'll do it for you. Well, when the deadline was up, we attacked, and the Israelis attacked, and we'll get into what the Israelis did in this attack. But we flew, I think 7 B-2 stealth bombers out of Whiteman Air Force Base here in my home state of Missouri on about a 36-hour round trip, and with precision guided munitions just took out all 4 of their nuclear facilities, exactly like what President Trump said he was going to do. The U.S. also attacked the Houthis, the Houthi rebels. You have Hamas in Gaza. You have the Houthi rebels that are in the West Bank of the Jordan River, and then you also have Hezbollah, which is up in Lebanon. And the Houthis had attacked some U.S. Ships, and so we attacked them right back and pretty much eliminated the Houthis. They're kind of a ragtag outfit compared to the Hezbollah, which is really a more significant military threat. Whenever Iran attacked Israel, we strengthened the Iron Dome, and we provided Patriot missile interception assets to Israel to strengthen the Iron Dome and intercept more missiles, which the vast majority of them were intercepted. Thankfully, some still didn't really reach a target because they're just lobbing them somewhere into the middle of Israel. But that was something that kind of solidified the relationship between the United States and Israel, and let the whole entire world community know we're willing to put ourselves to the test and willing to deploy some of our assets in order to protect Israel. President Trump demanded that Hamas release the hostages. Whenever they did not do that, he said, "You know what, BB, you need to go in and do what you need to do," and that's what Israel did. One other thing is that President Trump went to the UN whenever the UN was weighing whether to grant recognition of a Palestinian state, and President Trump went there and read them the Riot Act. I mean, this was a total dressing down, calling them out for being anti-Semitic, their fecklessness, their ineffectiveness as an organization. I mean, he just went in there and just lit them up verbally. And, I think that was one thing that really put them on notice, but nobody's ever come there to the UN and talked to them that way accurately and correctly. I almost would like to have had President Trump deliver that underneath a tent that says, "Prove me wrong," because you really can't. He spoke the truth. Then that's kind of a summation of what the United States did here. And the second part is, let's take a look and see what Israel and mainly Benjamin Netanyahu has done. Yeah, he sent the Israeli Defense Force into Gaza and decimated Hamas. Sent them into the tunnels. Now, they could have gone in and just made Gaza a parking lot and started from scratch. They did not do that. And this was at great risk to the Israeli Defense Forces. They went house to house, street to street, tunnel by tunnel to limit civilian casualties, because Hamas likes to hide their bases of military operation under schools, around schools, under hospitals, and within hospitals, just because then if you attack them, oh, well, you know what, there are 10 civilian casualties, see, Israel's so bad, but they're really using innocent civilians as human shields. As a matter of fact, to let you know exactly how savage Hamas is and how uncaring they are about their own people, whenever the Palestinians were trying to evacuate, Israel would actually drop leaflets and say, "Hey, if you're a civilian, get out of here because we're coming." And as Palestinians were trying to exit out of those communities, Hamas shot them. They executed them. They shot them when they were trying to leave. So Hamas is a 7th century ruthless organization that does not deserve to exist. So my opinion there. But what the Israeli Defense Force did with incredible intelligence, basically every single Hamas leader has been killed. And it was interesting because I mentioned Qatar or Qatar, whatever you want to call it. I call it Qatar earlier, that they proved problematic because they actually funded Hamas. They were harboring some Hamas brass top officials in Qatar, and Qatar kind of had their attitude changed about their involvement in this whole operation. Whenever Israel had identified the location of a top Hamas leader and was inside Qatar. And so they fired a missile from Israel right straight into his bedroom and killed him dead. And Qatar was just like, okay, that could have been, that was technically an act of war, but Qatar was just like, yeah, you know what? Israel's serious. And if they want to start wiping people out, they can do that because they have the most formidable military force in the area. So I think that kind of got Qatar to change their attitude just a little bit, be a little bit more receptive to supporting this peace deal. Israel, I mentioned Hezbollah. Israel also clobbered Hezbollah to the north in Lebanon with traditional military measures, went into Lebanon with tanks and personnel, but they also conducted asymmetric warfare. And one of the things that they did, Mossad is the Israeli secret police, and the amount of intelligence they can accumulate and their skills are really maybe matched only by ours here in the United States. So what they did is the Hezbollah terrorists, they had been made aware that the Israelis were tracking their troop movements by using their cell phones. So they said, hey, we're going to get rid of all our cell phones. We're going to get pagers. We're going to just get old style pagers. And so what Mossad did is they set up a shell corporation to provide the pagers to Hezbollah. Okay, so Hezbollah paid Israel for these pagers. They shipped these pagers into Israel or into Lebanon. Hezbollah distributed them within their ranks, but these pagers had just a little bit of an extra feature to them that most pagers don't, and that's called C4 explosives on a remote detonator. And so at a certain point in time, Israel decided, hey, you know what? Let's go ahead and let's push the button. So they pushed the button, and all these pagers exploded. And there were a tremendous loss of life among Hezbollah. They had body parts blown off. They had significant injuries. I mean, this is pretty incredible. And so that, along with the traditional warfare tactics, really neutralized Hezbollah to the north. And then we have the attack from Israel on actually onto Iran. And Iran had lobbed, thousands of rockets into Israel. And so whenever Israel retaliated, they retaliated against these rocket launchers and against different Iranian military assets. And there was this one time whenever this one moment whenever Iran was attacking Israel, that Iranian rockets actually hit Mossad headquarters in Israel. And so the Iranian Republican Guard went out on their X account and said, hey, we've got too bad we hit your headquarters, Mossad. So, and Mossad actually replied to the tweet or to the post, and they replied with a picture of, in night vision goggles, of Mossad actually in country in Iran. And their response was, oh, that's too bad. Nobody was there. We're all in Iran. And they launched drone attacks against Iran within Iranian territory. I mean, this is just incredible. So I think that all this was a sequence of events that really set the stage to where we could even get to this point. Now, how this is going to shape up with the security force and training the Palestinians, this is really going to have to take a change of heart in the Palestinian people, because the Palestinian people support Hamas over 85% in country, to have them in control of the country and to control their government. Now, a lot of that could be because they get shot if they don't. Now, that's a pretty good motivator. but we'll have to see what happens here. But I think that really the circumstances that have at least gotten to this point has made it to where possible peace in Gaza or in Israel and their neighbors is actually something that is legitimately possible now. And whether that will hold or not, not sure. But your two main contributors to that, and the two main factors that made this happen, are undoubtedly President Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And if President Trump does not get a Nobel Peace Prize in 2026, then something's really wrong. Maybe he can build another ballroom with the prize. But that's kind of where we are here right now. It's a fluid situation. We'll just kind of see what happens. But yeah, definitely check out Victor David Hansen's piece there on the Daily Signal. Back to you, John.
Well, Brett, thank you very much. That was a fabulous report. And you did touch on some of Victor's 10 points of why this was possible now. So you gave our listeners and viewers a little insight there, and I do appreciate it. And I think I'm agreeing with you that phase 2 is going to be the most difficult. If they can get through that and get to phase 3, then maybe we will have peace in the Middle East after 3,000 years. Wow, I can't hardly fathom that. So let's turn to Debbie Stewart now and ask her to talk about what's supposed to happen in phase 3, which is somewhere down the road. We don't know when we'll get there, but Debbie, talk to us about the governance and reconstruction plan of phase 3.
Unmute yourself, Debbie.
I was such a good person and muted myself. I totally forgot. So this one is a little bit different in that it really hasn't gotten going yet. And it's really based on how we do with phases 1 and 2. So I'm going to talk about some of the plans. And then I wanted to also touch on what are some of the potential issues with these governance plans. Because my background is actually change management, organization development. And so my job would be to go in to an organization before they implement a new process to ready them for the change. And there are so many issues, just like, let's just say a manufacturing facility. This is a country with 2 opposing views that are so against each other that it's almost like so many pieces have to fall into place. And a lot of what I'm going to talk about on phase 3 with the governance and the reconstruction is all just, some of it is very vague too. And it's not even been put together yet. But let's just talk about what some of those points would be. So the first thing about the governance is the plan is that it's a transitional governance of a technocratic, apolitical Palestinian committee. So that right there, leaves a lot to be and they would be responsible for delivering the day-to-day running of the public services, municipalities, things like that. And then it would be made up of qualified Palestinian and international experts. There would be a governing board called the Board of Peace, and our friend Donald J. Trump would be the chair and president of that, with some other world leaders such as Tony Blair, who he's named, and then other leaders that haven't necessarily been named yet. And they're going to handle the funding for the redevelopment of Gaza, because we know that the Palestinian Authority has to go through reform in order to become the kind of government that they need to run this country in the new Gaza. And so we don't even know what that reform looks like. We don't know how long it's going to take. So this is supposed to be a transitional government or a transitional group of people until the Palestinian Authority gets to the point where they can handle this kind of governance. And some of that was laid out in Trump's plan in 2020. He talked about what does that look like for the Palestinian Authority. So you can go back and kind of take a look at that if you'd like. And this body, this governing body, will call on the best international standards to create modern and efficient governance that serves the people of Gaza and is able to attract investment. Now that's a big deal here now, is getting people to invest in Gaza with businesses and jobs and things like that, because we know that in order to be productive and economically viable, we need all those things to be there. So while the Palestinian Authority is undergoing the reforms, the goal will be they will eventually take over Gaza, and the Board of Peace will support them and supervise Gaza until all that happens. That's kind of the plan right now. Okay, so a Trump economic development plan is also in the makings to rebuild and re-energize Gaza. And that'll be created by another panel of experts. Will get together to work on this. And what they're trying to do is get people together who have done other miracle cities in the Middle East. They're trying to pull from experts that have done this before, that can make Gaza a wonderful place to live. There's a lot of investment proposals that are being talked about, a lot of development ideas and things like that. And again, they're going to want to create jobs, opportunity, and the hope for a future Gaza. Trump even mentioned a special economic zone will be established with preferred tariff and access rates to be negotiated with participating countries. So that's interesting. Nobody's going to be forced to leave Gaza. If they do decide to leave, they can re-enter. You can stay there. You can do whatever you want. But they're going to try to encourage people to stay in Gaza, to be there for the rebuild and the new Gaza, making it a wonderful place to live. Now, Hamas and the other factions in the area have agreed not to play a role in the governance of Gaza, indirectly, directly, or in any form or fashion. So that is what the agreement is supposed to be right now. But we also know that in certain groups, there are innate tendencies for people that is going to be challenging to this. The new Gaza will be fully committed to building a prosperous economy and a peaceful coexistence with their neighbors. And again, that is going to require a change in thinking, because they have not thought this way before. So a lot of the working with the people in both Israel and Gaza is that they have to start thinking differently to coexist together in peace. Because when you hate each other, or when you have feelings of remorse, or you think somebody shouldn't be around, or you shouldn't have a country, or you should, those are very deep-seated issues that have to be dealt with. So there's going to need to be a lot of team building. How's that? Okay, let's see. Any questions so far on any of this?
Well, I don't have any questions for you. It's all pretty clear. Dale has his hand up.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. This Board of Peace, this really, I find this fascinating that they're going to really have this Board of Peace. And did you say that's going to be comprised of different factions from the whole region? Is that what you're saying?
Well, he said other leaders, including Tony Blair right now. Tony Blair was the one he really kind of called out, because he has already been part of some of the things going on in Europe. Yeah. And he was the prime minister a while back.
Right.
But he just said other leaders. So I don't know any other specific names besides that. But I know he wants to involve neighboring countries and those that are in the area. But I haven't seen anything further about any more specifics. That's why this is all at the 30,000 foot level right now. That's the issue.
Yeah.
They're doing phase 1 and 2, and everybody's probably got an idea what phase 3 looks like in their own mind. But since it's so vague, we don't really know.
Yeah.
So it's going to be difficult to implement phase 3 if we get through 1 and 2. Because these vague ideas we tend to form our own idea what that looks like.
I guess what I try to envision, what is Gaza going to look like? How is it going to govern itself without being a country, without having a government per se? I just have a hard time envisioning that, but.
You know what, Dale? Time will tell.
Yeah, I guess so.
And I think Brett has a comment to make too.
Yeah, I think I thought it was kind of funny, and in Kathy, you're exactly right. I mean, the reason why it's vague because nobody really knows, and there's never been this kind of peace in this part of the world. But I did like whenever President Trump said that they wanted him to be the chair or the president of this what's it called? It's a Council of Peace.
Board of Peace.
Board of Peace.
Yeah.
Board of Peace. So he's gonna be the chairman of the Board of Peace. I thought back to the 1787 Constitutional Convention, whenever they were trying to figure out who should be president. They said, well, can only be one person, George Washington. And I just thought, there's going to be one person, Donald Trump. And I did also like to hear the I don't know if President Trump actually used this term, but I know I'd seen it on a few memes to where they had the Mediterranean beach area called Gaza Largo.
Mhm.
And I thought Gaza Lago. I thought, well, yeah, that's. I don't know if that's just a meme to kind of tweak some of the people. But
beachfront property in Gaza. I mean, someday
it's a beautiful area. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how this all how this all comes together.
Okay, Debbie, was that the end of your report, or do you have more?
Yeah, I just have another minute. I just wanted to make a comment in addition to that, is that, the strategy also, there's talk about a Palestine as a state, right? But it's very vague. And so there's been no commitment, but it's talked about. So that's what I was mentioning, that if the people in Palestine, the people in Gaza are thinking, oh, we're going to get our own state or whatever, and then they really don't, that's going to be a huge issue. So managing the expectations that this third phase that's way off in the future and is so vague and cloudy, that they're going to have to really be working on stage 3 as they're going through 2, so they can manage those expectations.
Yeah, good insight. And Debbie, I want to thank you for the research that you've done and for this enlightening report on phase 3. It really is very nebulous, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Mr. Dale.
Yeah, I just want to comment. I think these presentations have been great, and I mean it's clear to me. I think the reason this is happening, like Victor Davis Hanson was saying, the things that have happened that have brought this about, like the bombing of Iran, we all know, or I've certainly known, I feel Iran was the head of the snake. And I think that was such a big move to take out Iran. I think that's what really caused a lot more of this to happen. And the pager story, I just love hearing that story over and over. I mean, it's just amazing how they were able to pull that off.
Yeah.
What an amazing act of intelligence and I don't know what you want to call it, but
it's called Parting the Red Sea Part 2.0.
2.0. I think it's just amazing. But it's those types of things. I truly do believe that's what's brought this all about. Things like that. And
Dale, I think Dale, you're exactly right. I think it's one thing to have the capability to do this. It's another thing to have the will to do it.
Yeah.
And we have had so many empty words on foreign policy. Don't cross this red line. Okay, well, that red line got crossed. Okay, well, don't cross this one. Don't come inside this circle. It was always backtracking. And President Trump was just, he said, hey, you know what? Iran, I'm going to give you until this date and time to give up your nuclear program. And at 1 minute after that, you're he didn't say, he obviously didn't telegraph this before. Just like, okay, well, is he going to do something? And is he not? Is it going to be 2 days, a week, or not at all? And it's like, no. 1 minute after that, time's up. Send them.
And
and just
only
annihilate it.
Trump would have made this happen. Only no other previous administration
Well,
could have done
100%.
and I wanted to make that point, Dale. Well stated. He thinks outside the box. He's not following the same old rules. And look at the difference it makes because he is just thinking outside the box. Everything about what he does seems to throw people for a loop. Yet in the end, they go, "Oh, that really did work." I mean, it's amazing. Probably 95% of the time, everything he's done, both in the Middle East and everywhere else throughout the world, that's the approach he's taken. It certainly does seem to be working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks
Good.
all. And Ken Whaley from the northern part of Idaho, glad to have you back in here. And glad you got your audio problem solved. So
Yes, I apologize for that.
no problem. No problem. It was just kind of fun at the very beginning of this hour. Boy, we heard you and heard you and heard you.
He
Well,
wanted
that
to
worked
make sure
both
you heard.
ways. Believe me, I heard you guys over and over again too.
Yeah.
Did you stop talking or not? I couldn't. Anyway,
It
all
was
my bad
endemic.
entirely. I appreciate the patience there.
Well, we survived it. Well, Dale and Ken Kashuba, have been relatively quiet. And next thing on my list of things to do is to ask Dale for some commentary. Did we just get that commentary, Dale?
You just got most of it there, I believe.
Okay.
I like I said, there's some things that the Board of Peace, the intelligence, the things making the things happen that have happened. I am concerned about the hostage bodies. I don't know that could take years for them to all be discovered. I do believe a lot of them are probably under tons of rubble. And anyway,
and you got to feel for their family members.
Yeah.
They want those bodies returned so they can be given a decent burial.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
As any one of us would want.
Well, it's an ongoing developing situation. There's no doubt about it. But I firmly believe had Trump not won the election, we wouldn't even be close to where we are now on this.
We would be
we'd still be where we were before.
Well, we'd be in much worse condition than we were before.
Yeah.
We'd be a world apart from where we were.
Yeah.
Well, then, Ken Kashuba, do you have any commentary to make on this whole idea?
Well, other than the fact that it's been well covered tonight, so I really don't have a whole lot to say about that. Other than really, some of this was laid during President Trump's first term. The Abraham Accords, which were signed during his first administration, it basically normalized relationships between Israel and 4 other nations: Morocco, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, and Sudan, I believe. And that kind of laid a lot of the groundwork. And I just, obviously Trump deserves the peace Nobel Peace Prize, but there were a couple of people that were certainly, I think, he relied upon to get a lot of this done too. And that was Steve Witkoff and his son-in-law, Jared Kushner.
Yeah.
Apparently, from what I've read, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff were instrumental in getting many of those Middle Eastern nations to the table and to be able to talk about even getting the plan initialized and sat down. I think some of those countries might not even come to the table if it wasn't for those two. So there was some of his administration that obviously at this point made a big impact. And as I said, I think the Abraham Accord, which was basically settled in or signed in that first administration, was some groundwork for all this. But what remains to be seen, I think, at this point is as Debbie laid out, there's a lot that has to be has to happen now, and the best we can do at this point really is kind of go forward, knowing that we've got a good start and a good I think plan to finally bring some peace to something that biblically has been just historical and just a constant unsettling and non-peace arrangement there. So,
Yeah.
we could probably spend another whole roundtable looking at the biblical aspects of all this and what we can expect, from that side of things. But just a great way to present that tonight. Appreciate you you guys coming on tonight.
I just want to stress again, we wouldn't be here now without these things happening that had to happen. We wouldn't be at this point had we
That's
not
right.
had those.
That's right.
Right.
It was a coming together of all these various streams.
I just want to mention also that John, a little later on in our program here, will be talking about upcoming COS Today broadcast. And on November 10th, Debbie Stewart is going to educate us on the Abraham Accords. I've heard that mentioned so many times, and quite honestly, I don't know what was all involved in those. So Debbie's going to educate us on that, on those come November 10th.
I gave you a little preview and lead in there, Debbie.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Brett.
I just wanted to throw one more thing in here. I mean, it obviously there's lots of different people who were involved in this whole entire thing. I also think that we need to give recognition to God, because a lot of this math, humans can't do this math. I really believe that this was divinely guided, divinely inspired, and I think that it's, you can say what you want about President Trump, imperfect individual, all this stuff. Mentioning biblically, God has used imperfect people as vessels to do all kinds of good, and I think that is truly something that he has done through President Trump. And so I think we need to give recognition to God for his
Brett,
providence.
Brett, I agree with you, Brett. I agree with you, Brett, and I think what we might be witnessing in a modern age is a modern miracle right in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
You can go back and look at all the different miracles performed in biblical times, and sometimes it makes your eyes roll back. But we could be looking at something as a more of a modern miracle being performed, and it's didn't take Jesus being on the earth to do it.
Is the same thing going to happen in Ukraine, do you think?
Good question.
That's a horse of a different color.
That's a whole nother broadcast, isn't it?
Well, but the pattern or the example could be well used, and I think if Putin has any common sense at all, he might take a look at that and say, we might have to approach this a little differently than he normally would.
Well, if trade played such a big role in this, in the Gaza thing, there are already efforts underway trade-wise to have an impact on Russia.
Yep.
So
we will see
maybe the pattern is already in place or in process.
Mm-hmm. Let's hope and pray that that's the case. Well, I'll tell you, one of our regular contributors is a guy named David Allen Punt, and he's a COS contributor from the frozen tundra in northern Minnesota, and he has prepared a Dave's Daily Dose that's also on this topic. He's seen it yet, so I'm looking forward to it. And whoever has the controls, let's hear from Dave.
All right.
Reuters reports this morning that someone calling themselves Hamas has called on mediators in the Gaza mess to put the Community Support Committee together so we can get the governing started. The Palestinian terror group, according to Reuters, demanded the next step, that the Community Support Committee get started, even though Hamas hasn't fulfilled the rest of Stage 1. Point 4 of the 20-point plan says all hostages, alive and dead, has to be returned and weapons down. Now, this is Dave's Daily Dose on BrokenRoadRadio.com. I'm David Allen Punt. But Hamas says, according to Reuters again, We lost the hostages, the dead ones. The live ones are back in the loving arms of their families, but we lost the dead ones. They were here a minute ago, but they're gone now. Maybe somebody took them. The Jerusalem Post reported on Wednesday that an unnamed Israeli official said Hamas knows very well where most of the remains are, that the head choppers and neck slicers are just playing games, like they've never done that before. Meanwhile, the Post quoted the same Israeli officials, or different ones, that negotiations on Phase B have not started yet. Is that Stage 2? Maybe. Probably. The officials added that there are professional teams in Egypt right now talking about methods for locating the bodies of the kidnapped fallen, the ones Hamas says they can't find. The ones they'll no doubt keep looking for while they start the community support program, for which they promise to leave their weapons outside. That sounds like some sort of Jedi mind trick to me. Meanwhile, Hamas supposedly admitted that the unidentified body they sent masquerading as a one-time hostage was really a Palestinian who was helping the Israeli Defense Force find the tunnels. And Hamas was not happy about that, so they dispatched him forthwith. Meanwhile, Mr. Trump told CNN that he would consider allowing Israeli forces back into the battle. Trump said, "Israel will return to those streets as soon as I say the word." Yesterday on Truth Social, Donnie J said, "If Hamas continues to kill people in Gaza, we will have no choice but to go in and kill them." And no mention of the community support group. I'm David Allen Punt.
David is always worth listening to. I appreciate his input. We've got one other friend, our little buddy named Marengo Mike, who has asked for a moment of your time to give you an important reminder. Marengo?
Marengo Mike here, asking you to hit that like, subscribe, and especially that notification bell so you'll be reminded every time we go live. We really do appreciate your support. Now, back to our program.
Oh, that little guy's cute. Okay. Well, that brings us to the end of this month's roundtable. Before we close it out, I want to give you our email address. If you have any questions at all about Convention of States, send them to that email address that's on the bottom of your screen. Raise Your Voice, COS@gmail.com. That's Raise Your Voice, COS@gmail.com. Our next COS today will be next Monday, November the 3rd, and it's going to be about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Maha number 4, Make America Healthy Again. That's next Monday, November 3rd at 7 p.m. Eastern. And then, as Dale already intimated, the following week on November the 10th, a deep dive into the Abraham Accords that promises to be very helpful. And our next COS Today Roundtable will be on the 4th Monday of November. That's on the 24th of November at 7 p.m. Eastern. And to close us out, here's one final word from Marengo Mike.
Marengo Mike here with a reminder that our work to raise the bar on making our federal government accountable to the people is only halfway done. We need to grow our grassroots army of citizens every day to fulfill the vision of our forefathers and keep our land free and prosperous. So, if you have never signed the petition to show your support, use that QR code and do that now. While you're there, why not kick it up a notch and volunteer for many of the positions available where your talents can make a difference as we march into a new year. Thank you, and God bless.